The year is 2022, and we live in an age of cultural destruction and cultural desecration by people that should be preserving culture, media, movies and books for the sake of modern political ideals that should not exist in vintage pieces and barely should exist in modern media, to be honest, but that's a whole different discussion. The Rings of Power seems to be getting worse, and the more I watch about it, the more I'm watching these cast interviews, and there's a lot I'm going to talk about in this video, so please forgive me, we're going to be long here. The more and more concerned I have, and this is a symptom of something bigger, a cultural reset almost, destruction of culture. Like, cultural appropriation is okay as long as it's Western culture, apparently. The people that believe that Cleopatra was black or Egyptian or Arab, no, she was Greek, or people that believe Alexander the Great was a woman. There's this weird disconnect between what people want to present, actual information and actual facts. Watching the disingenuous interviews with these actors and the promotional tour that Amazon is paying for is a major problem. For example, the actress playing the female dwarf has stated she is the first female dwarf in Tolkien's work, the first one represented. No, you're not. You are factually wrong. You are 100% wrong in that. Be it the Peter Jackson movies or Tolkien's work, you might want to fact check what you're saying. The timeline compression, which is also a bugbear, but also the idea that the people that have produced Rings of Power, the showrunners and a lot of the people involved, find Tolkien's work problematic, and I really hate that word. It's a weasel word. They won't actually say why they find it problematic, but it's problematic. We saw it with The Wheel of Time, a complete bastardization and compression of work, incorporating modern themes that don't belong in there. Be it the physical representation of a female dwarf without a beard and elves with short hair and short ears. Timeline alterations which have characters alive at the same time which would never have met. To the point that they might have found someone's body a few thousand years later, but they're definitely unalived at this point. Then you end up with the situation of showrunners that don't care. They don't care about Tolkien's work, and watching those interviews was shameless. Watching those two speak, it was like watching Dumber and Dumberer. It was just ridiculous. Most of the stuff they were talking about was factually incorrect, to the point of ridiculousness, and them trying to kind of use the pre-media trained, spoon-fed, rehearsed answers in questions that I don't think really related to it. Even the statement that half-foots are not hobbits was hilarious. Half-foots are a type of hobbit, and they were not in Middle-earth in the Second Age. There is no reference to any hobbits within that era. This is where we get more complicated. The Second Age was more focused on men, but then elves, which is a whole different discussion and different video. The promotion of this has been a disaster, and watching the people clap like seals who are so happy about this show, who will rant about Amazon being, a big multinational corporation and Jeffrey Bezos is the son of the devil, but you're clapping like seals, like dancing monkeys with the organ grinder. It's pathetic at this point, and your hypocrisy is showing. We're in a situation with the book covers, and this is a thing. Movie tie-in books are a thing. They happen. I'm not a fan of them. I do own a few. Sometimes I have no choice in that matter, but I do own a few, and it's promotion, it's cross-promotion, and it creates a familiar brand. It's very simple. The problem is they've slapped on Rings of Power posters onto The Lord of the Rings, with a story that bears almost no resemblance to The Lord of the Rings, and what I find really strange is, given what little rights that they have to Lord of the Rings, why is this being done? They only really have rights to... Amazon literally have some rights to some film and the little notes at the back of the book. Tiny little section. That's what the entire series is based on. That's off. And it seems really strange that they've done this, because they're trying to tell a story which in theory should be in the Silmarillion or the Unfinished Tales. The problem is they don't have the rights to them. Now, if they had the rights to them and they did a film tie-in cover to those kind of books, then that would be understandable. I wouldn't like it, but because, film tie-in covers are awful. But that's more understandable than slapping Rings of Power stuff on it, contrary to what the young angry woman on Twitter said to me the other week, when she didn't reply when I just stated a fact to her. I love people like that. Gutless. Then you wind up in a weird situation of other rights and licensing, like the promotion of this. I remember when the Lord of the Rings films come out, and yeah, there was some cross promotion with other things, but I have never seen so much for one television show in my life ever. And I don't know if it's just here, but I mean, I can buy a Kit Kat with Galadriel on it. And again, I understand cross promotion, but this feels very cheap. The marketing for Lord of the Rings that Peter Jackson did, who was very respectful of the source material, was very different. What New Line did was completely different to what they're doing with this. Then you wind up in another situation. This whole idea, it doesn't matter how they change it. And there is a massive difference between adapting work and changing work. Adaptation is completely understandable, and I will pick on Peter Jackson again. They took certain story elements that could be 50 pages in a book, but condensed them down to a 2-minute scene. Some characters got shifted around, especially plot points between Two Towers and Return of the King, because the end of the books cross over. There are events happening in those books at the same time, which is, and I get why they did that. They also gave a few other characters a little more motivation, and we got some characters a little earlier. Again, they pulled the material and they created something that was really respectful. They didn't rewrite a character's backstory. Galadriel, warrior princess, man-spreading with her Final Fantasy sword. Then there's the overall cheapness of this. I have seen some really budget productions and fan films and cosplay that look 100 times more expensive than this. This has a BBC Merlin vibe, and some of that stuff looked cheap. BBC Merlin. But the fact that the chainmail is printed onto shiny fabric, and again, I get that for extras because it's a cost-cutting thing, but not main people who are going to be on camera for a lot of time. But overall, everything is looking really, really cheap. The CGI looks really artificial. It looks, I've seen fan productions that look better. And then there's the other production stuff that's happening behind the scenes. They're building a new studio. They moved the production from New Zealand to London or England. And when they went in there is no studio space. So they're building new studios, one of the major film studios in the UK. The problem is this could take anything from 9 to 12 months. So even if they do greenlight a second season, you might not see the second season until 2023, 24. Actually, we're in 22, so yeah, 23, 24. You're not going to probably see it next year. They've put the line out, we want to see the reaction to it, and I get the feeling that they're going to retool things. But again, if it does happen, I don't think there's going to be a season 2. I just have a really odd feeling this is going to be an expensive failure. I've read better fan fiction, if you want the honest truth. Put all that in with the cluelessness of the people around it. Cluelessness of this sort of vapid fan base, that it's their current identity for the moment. You know, oh my god, I'm such a Lord of the Rings geek. I watched some clips on YouTube once. Please shut up. These people are morons. And that's the problem, a vacuous fan base, people that will eat up and consume media because it's woke, and a level of narcissism amongst people who just, it's a disconnect. And on that note of narcissism, I see people saying, well, I need to see myself in this. I'm so happy I'm going to be able to see myself in The Lord of the Rings. If you can only relate to media that you can see yourself in, there is a major disconnect between who you are as a person and everything else. It's a level of narcissism that is extremely uncomfortable and very telling. The idea that you have the right to destroy something that is not just the backbone of modern fantasy, it is the backbone of much English literature. And this is another problem. Like I said, cultural appropriation seems to be okay as long as it's Western culture. The idea that Cleopatra was apparently black, again, repeating that point. She wasn't, she was Greek. The idea you can input something that's now, a 2022 idea, into something that was based on Anglo-Saxon Britain, based on those myths and legends and stories and Beowulf and countless other things. This show should never have existed, and the more I see, the worse it seems to get. I'm seeing this kind of destruction and breakdown of culture. We've seen it, what Disney have done to Star Wars. We've seen what all of these companies are doing with these current media and IPs. They're milking them until they're a dead cow. and they will keep milking until the cow is nothing but skeletons and no one cares anymore. I have a really bad feeling if this is successful, or if they keep trying to push it, we're going to see more and more stuff inspired by Lord of the Rings rather than direct adaptation, and that's a change in the marketing as well. They've shifted from this is based on works by Tolkien to it's inspired by works of Tolkien. The trailers are bad and don't say anything. The acting is not looking great, and I've looked into a lot of the actors, and one of them, everything I've seen her in, she's very wooden. Like the actress playing Galadriel, she's like Wish Kate Blanchett, which is not good. This show is a destruction of something far bigger, and it's symptomatic of a bigger problem in modern media and modern television and modern film and modern comic books. This is going to be the Last Jedi. This is going to be the rise of whatever that god awful last movie, Star Wars movie, was called. This is going to be the equivalent of that. And if it does flop horribly, we're the ones that are going to get the blame, because the fans and the misogynist fans of Tolkien can't appreciate change. And all these mainstream journalists and all of this stuff who are going to cry about it. I have no sympathy, because Tolkien's work is sacred, and it should be. There are certain things culturally that are sacred, and Tolkien's work is one of them. But again, this is symptomatic of a bigger problem. We live in an age where you can't have strong male characters on screen without them being the comic relief. This show is doomed, and I just have a feeling that it's going to fail. So, tell me what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys later.